Welcome to The Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. Hi, I'm bela.and.mike.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Today's guest on the podcast is Mark Drager. He founded Phanta Media, where he helps companies with their brand strategy. Mark has helped both large and small companies with their brand strategy and making sure they communicate a clear, distinctive message to their customers, suppliers, and new potential customers. We had a fascinating conversation about how many startups and small companies do not think about brand in the early days, and then they must spend considerable time and effort recrafting their brand.
Yeah, Bela, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I mean, I'm always interested in hearing from branding experts about how to build and refine a brand. I'm always a little skeptical of this kind of advice, but I think it's always interesting to hear different viewpoints. I've been involved in lots of startups that have made really some horrendous branding mistakes. So, I kind of firsthand still feel the burn a little bit of making branding errors. So I really feel like I always have a lot to learn. So I'm excited. So let's get right to the interview with Mark Drager.
Hi, listeners. Bela here. Today I have a great guest, Mark Drager. He is a brand strategist and founder of Phanta Media. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, Bela, thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So one quick question. So when you're at a social event, a non-work related social event, and you get introduced to somebody, and after the introduction, they look at you in the eye and they say, "Nice to meet you, Mark. Tell me what you do." How do you answer that question?
I think I'm like every entrepreneur ever who struggles to explain what it is I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it's been so bad that my wife at times has spent years not really knowing how to explain what it is I do. So depending on who's across from me, I'll either just say like, I own a marketing agency. Like if I really don't want to dig into it.
Yeah.
If I want to dig into it a bit more, or if I feel like they're up for a bit of a conversation, I talk about the fact that I'm a brand strategist, that I've owned a creative agency for 15 plus years. And if they really want to dig into it, or I want to blow their mind, I say I'm a professional conversationalist. Because I'm a professional host as well, and I host panels and I host my own podcast, as you know, and I help host and MC live events.
Yeah.
And it's like, which version of me do you want?
Well, the professional host sounds, very dramatic.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
And host has a lot of meanings, which is kind of nice, right? You could be a party host, or you could be a show host.
Yeah, I could work on cruise ships.
Exactly.
If things go sideways, right?
Exactly. So, Mark, one of the things. So this show is predominantly focused on entrepreneurs, starting businesses and things. And I find one of the challenges with entrepreneurs is they always are convinced their product is so great it will sell itself. They don't need to think about brand. They don't need to do any of those things. And oftentimes that's what leads to their demise, right? Because they don't focus on those things. So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts in that space.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you build it, they will come is one of the things that holds most of us up. We spend so much time waiting for things to be perfect. We need our product, we need our service, we need our team, we just need everything to be perfect before we talk about it, because we know, like, listen, as soon as we start talking about this, the floodgates will open, the people will come, the sales will overwhelm us. And so we waste months and years waiting for perfection, and then we release it and it's crickets.
Yeah.
It's crickets, because what I like to tell people when I'm working with them, and I learned this the hard way, the world is not waiting for you. You're not going to release your product, your service, start your business, and everyone's going to go, oh, thank goodness you're finally here. I have been waiting for you to do this thing that I didn't know that I needed, or this competing service, or this slightly better version of something. That's not happening. So we know that's not happening. So first of all, the first step is not waiting for perfection, because as soon as you get out into the market, you're gonna get client feedback or customer feedback. You're gonna learn things. You're gonna realize it's not as good as you thought it was, or maybe this one thing that you didn't even know people love turns out that's the thing that they love. And so, step one for building a brand is just starting. Listening to what people are saying, not arguing with them, because again, in our minds, we're the creators of these things, and it's like, no, this is the thing that you're supposed to love. Why do you love that other thing over there? And we can use real case scenarios. I mean, Slack is a famous case where Slack, the communication SaaS,
Yes.
it was the one part of a game that they had invented and created. They created a game, a universe, a game, and the chat feature was a small part of this big thing that went bankrupt and failed.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to lay off all of their team and all of their staff.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, there's this one little thing. So the first step is that, and then the next thing is to really focus on who you are and focus on the customers and the clients and focus on the competition, not for what they're doing, for what they're not doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice for what they're not doing. So how do you focus on clients? Let's peel that onion back. I'm a small business, I got maybe $1 million in sales. How do I focus on clients? What are the things I need to do?
Yeah. So depending on whether you're a service-based business or a product business or what have you, you cannot, either from a marketing point of view, a sales point of view, or even ownership point of view, detach yourself from your customers. So this means it might be as simple as reading the social media comments.
Yeah.
How many, I don't like spending time going through my social media comments, but the things people are saying matters. And looking at customer feedback, listening to what prospects or customers say if you're able to record calls with your sales team, let's say. I like to, anytime I launch something new or I'm doing something new, what I love to do is I love to go to an event, a networking event, a mastermind, something where I will be forced to introduce myself something like 30 or 40 times over the course of a day or two. And think about it, because, if you're launching a new product or something and you show up and someone, oh, what do you do? Oh, I own a branding company and we help these people in this way.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not going to be very good, but that's cool, because you're going to turn and there's going to be someone else you can talk to. And you'll find saying it over and over and over again and watching what they react to, what they lean into, what piques their curiosity, the follow-up questions they have.
Yep.
That's all this is. That's all we're trying to do, is just figure out how to connect better with what it is our customers or our audience cares about.
Yeah. It's like a stand-up trying to perfect their 5-minute routine, right? And they go up every open mic night and they work on it and they see what connects, what doesn't connect, right?
Yeah.
Similar thing.
I love that analogy, because it's true. Comedians are one of the best. I don't know if it's a skill set so first of all, they want to tell the truth. They want to say it in a way that's different and unique that you haven't heard before, and they want to laugh. Yeah. And if they get a laugh, awesome, they won. If they don't get a laugh, how can they change it to get a laugh?
Right.
And it's literally, that is the process. And there's so much that we as marketers, as business owners, salespeople, there's so much we can learn from that. Just that brutal, let's try it. Did we get what we wanted? We didn't. How can we tweak it?
Yeah. Yeah. As I reflect back, I can remember various different parts of my career. The notion of doing a focus group was really big, right? So they would do focus groups. You're thinking about a product, to help you hone the features, et cetera. What are your thoughts on focus groups?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I used to do them a lot as well. And I think overwhelmingly they just don't work. It's not to say it's not a good exercise. And maybe if you're a large company and you need to, big companies, what do they say? They cover their butts. Yeah. Right. The reason they do the focus group is so that way when things go sideways, the person can say, well,
check a box, right?
Management, we focus grouped it. I mean, right. But the truth is, here's the problem with focus groups. One, people lie. So we know that people in those situations, they just won't tell the truth, right? They'll say that they like things that they don't like. They say they'll buy stuff that they won't buy. The group dynamics will shift conversations and influence people into all kinds of things, and studies have shown that they can be influenced. So that's not great. The second thing is, so much of what we want to try and market or sell to people, they don't even know that they want. And so they can't even articulate it. Right. It's our job to get them excited, and it's our job to get them to see that this will help them. And so if we go out and we ask people things, one, they lie, and two, they don't know what they really want or even understand the opportunity. So we don't do any of that stuff. Yeah. Today, what we have access to, like at least at our firm, but a number of firms do, but we have access to data.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting about data, for example, we have access to the nation's largest market research and data tracking company. So we can get the results of what 250 million Americans on 1 billion devices with 1 trillion daily data touch points, what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then we can slice and dice that data based on all kinds of different sets to figure out not what they're telling us, but through their actions, where do they spend time? What are they focused on? What do they care about? What are they afraid of? Like once you start to get to that information, now we can start to connect us and our message and what we want to accomplish with what they care about most.
Right.
When you connect those dots, that is what branding is built on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, right? I can remember in the days when mail order was sort of in its infancy. It was called mail order, right? And companies would share lists. That was sort of that was their data, was their list, and sort of they know the response rate. They know how many people on their list would buy something and how many wouldn't. And now we've really progressed into this vast, I mean, that's the whole deal of Facebook and Google, let's face it, right? I mean, that's their whole net worth fundamentally, is all that data that they have on what we do, what we click on, what we don't click on, because everyone's watching all of the time, right? But the real skill is knowing what to do with that data. So how do you guys sort of crawl through that, right? Again, I'm a small guy. I got a couple million bucks in sales. Yeah. What am I going to do?
Well, let me share with you and all of the listeners here the process. I'll just give it to you.
Perfect.
So we have this process that we've developed called Core 3. And it's based on 3 core elements to every brand strategy. The first is you. You need to define what you want. Now, you've been around enough entrepreneurs. We've talked with enough people. People are very fuzzy on their goals. They're very fuzzy on what they want. So it's like you need to define your goals, your vision, your voice, what separates you. What all of that stuff you need to define the you. That's core element 1. Now you can do that by reading books. You can do that by talking to a friend. You can hire a therapist. You can hire a brand strategist. Like it doesn't matter. But you need a clear idea of what you want and what makes you special. Now most people stop there and they just start talking to the world and they say, "This is me. This is me. This is me," and they start shouting. But that's not enough, because we know that the way we show up, let's say at a wedding. I'm going to come to a wedding. I'm going to show up very differently than if I'm, let's say, out on a Friday night with a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Right. Both of them are me, different versions of me.
We all have lots of versions of ourselves, don't we?
My kids tell me that the version that's here right now on the podcast is like, "Oh, Dad, that's a very different version than the one tucking me in at night." Let's say, but the truth. So we have these different versions of you. So then the next question becomes, well, what version of you needs to show up? Well, you want to connect with prospects, with customers, or you want to build your audience. We all need to do that. So then the next question doesn't become, "Hey, I'm just going to pick a random version of me and shout it out to the world and hope I find people." No, I'm going to tailor how I show up to the people I'm looking to connect with in the environment I'm looking to connect with. So
know your audience.
Know your audience. It's not enough to have personas. It's not enough to just kind of go from your gut. It's not even enough to look at your current clients, because that'll tell you who you're currently selling to, but it won't tell you who you're not selling to. Right. So we need to get strategic with this. We need to be able to leverage this market research that I talked about, or we need to be able to go through, even if you don't want to hire a firm like us, go through and look at news articles, editorials, right? Like go to the New York Times, go look and deep dive at what people are saying about your industry, about your product from a customer point of view. Go to your competitor's YouTube channel and look at the comments that people are listing on YouTube. Go to their social media channel. Like if you can't do this by data, you can certainly grab all these little bits and pieces to see what people care about and want.
Yeah.
Great. So now we have core element 1. We know what we want. We have core element 2. We know what our customers are looking for. The last step is a competitive audit. As I mentioned earlier, not to see what our competitors are doing, but to see what they're not doing. Because once we're true to us and we're true to our audience, and we're showing up in a way that's different from our competitors, you have just created a 100% unique to you opportunity, right? You're not really going to be like your competitors. You're going to make deeper connections with your prospects or your customers or your audience. And you're going to be showing up in a way that you need to show up that's true to you. It's not going to feel inauthentic.
Yeah.
And then from there, you build a brand, right? You test different versions of messaging. You make sure your photography looks good. You make sure your logo and your colors and your fonts look the part, not too expensive, not too inexpensive, not just thrown together. And then your social media channels, your website, your landing pages, your sales funnels, your videos, your sales deck, the way you show up to keynote, like all of that stuff can then be tailored to the right audience, to you in a way that stands out. And that essentially is the process.
Yeah. But Mark, my product is so good. I don't need to do all that. I know people are just going to buy it because I believe in it.
Maybe. I mean, that hasn't been my experience. Yeah. In you have to give people a reason to be drawn in to either why you're doing what you're doing, what makes it unique. Stories are such a big part of this, but we've gotten past feature and benefit simple marketing. Yeah. We've gotten past just, relying on just like, I'm going to blast you with ads, and just make sure brand awareness is high enough. We're in a pretty competitive, pretty customer savvy world where no one likes to be sold to.
Right.
No one likes to see advertising. Like every study shows that quote unquote advertising no one wants.
Right.
But we still love story. We still have needs. We still want people to help guide us and help us find the right solutions. And so that's what we're doing these days.
Yeah. And we have so many choices today, right? For products and services. It's
too many.
Unbelievable. I always liken it to the bread aisle at the grocery store, right? Well, growing up as a kid, there was like white bread and one other brand. Now there's a whole freaking aisle of bread. And it's confusing as hell, right? There's got to be 20 or 30 different brands on that bread aisle.
Do you know the tea study?
No.
Is this something that you and your listeners have talked about? So
no. Tell us.
I don't know the official study name, but basically what they did was they looked at a grocery store aisle and they basically at eye level they ran two different control groups. The first group was only exposed to something like 5 or 6 varieties of tea, flavors, and then the other group was exposed to like 16 to 20. And then they've replicated this with all kinds of things, but the group that only had 6 varieties of tea outsold time and time again 16 to 20 varieties. Now, why might this be? Because you would think that the more choice that you offer, the more variety, the more things available, like I can customize it for me. So this is amazing. This was replicated with jeans, a pair of jeans. Right?
Yeah.
There used to be 2 types of jeans, right? There was like black denim and there was blue denim.
Yeah.
And now it's like washed and not washed and boot cut and tailored and tight fit and all of this stuff. The more variety they offer of jeans, the less they sell.
Yeah.
Now, this comes down to one thing. We don't want to make a mistake. As consumers, as customers, we want to pick the right thing. I'm going to spend money on this. It better be the right thing. And so the more variety you offer, the higher the anxiety goes with customers of picking the wrong thing. And if they'd rather buy nothing than pick the wrong thing, they actually abstain from making any decision at all.
The more doubt I have about my purchase.
Yes. So in our marketing, in our branding, we need to make sure that we limit the options. But as well, we also need to make sure that we are kind of the clear and only option.
Yeah.
And so this also plays, as you were saying, the bread aisle, right? Like in the old days, it's like, I needed bread. Great.
Right.
Now you stand there and you go, oh my goodness, which bread do I? You just buy the bread that you always bought, right? You're not going to buy that new one. You're not going to take that risk. You're not going to try that new thing. You have to work so much harder to break through. That's the world that we're all fit. You can't build it and they will come because it's just too much out there.
I can, going back to the days when Sears was a big brand, I can remember one of the things they did was good, better, best.
Yes.
Right? They help you select, right? I thought that was just I don't know who came up with that, but it was a stroke of genius from my perspective because I never bought the good. I always bought either the better or the best. And it was just great.
So that's still that. I used to drive by this RV sales dealership, and they always had the little one, then they had the medium one, and then they had the big honking one.
Yeah.
Now the little one, I don't really want to spend 30 grand on a little RV. I'm not going to spend $500,000 on this super bus. But maybe that $80,000, maybe that just looks like do you know what I mean? Like psychology in terms of price framing and being able to say like, hey, here's the solution that has a lot of value. Most people don't pick that. Here's the one that's the middle, and then here's the extravagant one. Almost everybody will always pick the middle one every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have another question for you about branding. And this is about naming your product or your company. Right. And there's sort of, at least in my own brain, I have two schools of thought. One is you pick a descriptive name or term, right? Something that describes what your business does or your product. Or you pick a made up word, right? Just no one knows what it means, but it's made up. What do you have thoughts on that?
There's no right or wrong strategy, but each have their pros and cons. So first of all, if you're going to develop a brand name, it needs to be something that you can own. So, for example, you asked me earlier about Phanta Media, this agency I started in 2006. Now, I didn't develop the name Phanta. Over the last 15 years, I actually feel like it's a bit soft. Like I'd much rather go with something like aggressive and harder. Phanta gets confused often with the pop or the soda that's out there, right? Fanta, everybody thinks of Fanta, but my agency spelled Phanta. It's short for phantasm, which is an optical illusion or apparition. But mostly the reason we landed on it was because it was really hard to incorporate a company and get a .com because a lot of the other names were taken.
Aha, yes.
So the truth is, originally we wanted Fresh Media Works. That was going to be the name of the company, feeling very 2006 at this point, I think. But so there's no right or wrong for naming other than the fact you want it to be something you can own, right? So ideally, you're going to get a .com or you're going to get, maybe a .io or a .whatever if you're a tech company, but you want to be able to own it. You want to make sure that no one else has a trademark on it. So that way you can own it. But if you're going to go descriptive, there's a few different options. Most people want to describe the service they offer. My tip is describe the outcome.
Oh, interesting.
So think about this, like this even came up, right? I mentioned our branding strategy is called Core 3 because there's 3 core elements to our branding process, right? The you, the audience, and the competitors. Makes sense to me, but it probably actually would have been more strategic if we called it something based on the outcome, like the one of a kind kick-ass branding process, right? Like it just something that more describes the outcome. So if you're an accountant, you can come up with a name where you're like, oh, we're an accountant agent or accountant firm, and we're going to come up with something super number based or super, precise or something with trust or whatever. Or it could just be, it could be called the tax advisors.
Right.
Like, oh, I need someone who's going to help with tax advisory services, or it could be called, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I just thought of one, right? Fred's window cleaning versus Fred's clean windows.
Sure. Or you can call it never clean a window again.
Right. So it's the
right?
result.
Like there's the outcome, right? It's just like
the outcome.
And then I always like to think of someone answering the phone, right? That's the other thing. It's like never clean a window again. How may I help you? Right? Like, can you say it?
Yes.
Can you replicate it? Can you spell it? Right. So think about now the radio commercial, which you may never have, but the radio commercial where it's like, you can contact us online at nevercleanawindowagain.com.
Right.
Or is that crazy? That's crazy long. So someone might go like never window clean, so I think of all these scenarios as coming up with a name, but there is the descriptor, or there is the just make up something.
Yes.
And as long as you follow the same core rules in terms of understanding, can you own it? Is it trademark? Does it exist in another language? So you're going to accidentally come up with something that, like the Pinto, right? Which in South America meant small male member,
Yes.
which wasn't great. So as long as you're doing all of these things, it doesn't really matter. But think through some of these things I'm mentioning. Can you say it out loud? Can you roll it off your tongue? Will people confuse syllables
Sure.
if English is a second language? Do you have to spell it each time? Phanta.com. I had to step up to buy Phanta.com because we had originally owned PhantaMedia.com. And then each time I'm like, that's P as in Peter, H as in Harry. Like I can't say PHANTAMEDIA.com. It's just like time after time after time. So these are the things you're going to live with your business. It better be something simple.
Well, that's probably the most thoughtful description of picking a name I've heard from folks, right? Of thinking about all these other considerations, like simple, like you said, answering the phone. How's it going to sound, right? You're going to have to spell it every time. Being able to get, doing the legal stuff of making sure you can use the word and you have rights to it, etc. But these other things were really good. Yeah, very nice. So can we take a dive back into Mark as a 6-year-old little boy and sort of what you did, what were your interests, where you grew up? Talk to me a little bit about how you got to where you are, right? You've built a successful business, so you're clearly a successful entrepreneur. So what was part of the path that got you here?
Well, if we dig back into my story, so I had a really idyllic childhood up until about the age of 7. So I grew up, I'm Canadian. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. So that's kind of like for Americans, like Toronto's like New York. Mm-hmm. It's our biggest market. Super safe though, really great. So, I mean, listen, I'm a straight white guy who grew up in an upper middle class family.
Yep.
So super idyllic childhood. My mom, my aunt, my sister, we grew up kind of together, spending weekends in the summer up at my family cottage, spending some time at each winter down at a condo in Florida. Life was great.
Yeah.
My mom remarried when I was 7, and my stepfather, which she didn't know at the time, but my stepfather was living with a mental illness. He had the manic side of being bipolar. Mm-hmm. So when you're bipolar, you have mania and you have depression. He only had the mania side of it. He was an alcoholic, a very angry person. And so kind of from the age of 7 to when I moved out at 16, very different childhood. It became an abusive home. I developed a lot of anxiety. A lot of stuff that I've spent the last number of years working through came from that time and that period. But I moved out of my house when I was 16. I met my current wife. I met my wife when I was 17 and she was 16. By 20, I'm done with college because I went to a technical college. Like I was ahead of schedule. We got married at 21. We had my daughter at 23. I started my company. But I always knew, to answer your question, how did I get here? I always knew that owning a business or being an entrepreneur was an option.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather moved from war-torn Germany to Canada in 1950 as a stonemason who only had a grade 6 education. And him and 3 of his cousins built a huge development firm. Yeah. And they did it through hard work. They did it through just taking on the risk. They did it through like really old school traditional principles. And so I have all of these amazing opportunities to draw on like my childhood in certain ways, watching my grandfather build this amazing company in other ways. And then all of the pressure cooker stuff that comes from also growing up in kind of abusive homes. So,
yeah. Very nice. And so what was the first company you started?
Phanta.
Okay.
Phanta Media, my agency. So I started it at 23, and I've every 2 or 3 years, as one needs to do, I've pivoted and made changes and made tweaks and watched what's happened with the market as things have commoditized and what have you. And then because I'm an agency, a bit of a unique thing that all agency owners know is, and we kind of dream of the other side of the fence. When you own a business, you spend your time building your business.
Yes.
When you own an agency, you spend your time building other people's businesses. And it takes a lot of energy to build your business and to build your client businesses. And at the same time, For anyone with ADHD, it's the greatest thing in the world because you are bouncing from company to company,
Yeah.
project, vertical to vertical, opportunity to opportunity. So I have built mine, but then through Phanta, we have certainly helped hundreds of others.
So is there a sweet spot for Phanta?
In terms of who we work with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we spent the first 10 years focused on the corporate market. And I mean, early on, the advice given to me was like, go where the money is. And it worked to a point, built up to a multi-million-dollar agency. Before COVID, had 24 full-time staff. But the disconnect was being an entrepreneur and having an entrepreneurial team servicing corporate clients who were very political and kind of corporate. It was always kind of this weird disconnect. And I didn't even realize how much of a disconnect there was between these two kind of worlds. Today, we take all of the learning, we take all of the systems, all of the processes that we did to deliver six-figure and projects and national campaigns, and we worked with the NBA, and we did all this really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Today, we help speakers, authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs. We help the people who look like me and who look like the people on my team, rather than try to go on these chase these big brands, chase these big things, be super corporate. I don't want to do that anymore. So today we help the entrepreneur, the speaker, the author, the coach. We help them with their personal brand.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. I want to start wrapping up. We've been at this 30 minutes almost. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
You were the first person to ever ask me that, but literally that is a question I ask my guests in those exact words. So bravo and kudos to you. What you should have asked me that you didn't. Let me answer it this way. Let me give you the things that people screw up the most that don't even realize is hurting their brands. So first of all, most people don't even realize that simple, cost-effective things hurt their credibility. First of all, photography. Using stock photography to represent your team or using obviously fake stuff that just feels fake, it doesn't help you.
Yeah.
You're better off having no photos at all than fake photos. And the other thing people don't realize is, like, especially if you're in a small town or even a university town or big city, it doesn't matter. You can go and for like $200 or $300, you can hire a photographer and say, hey, meet up with me for an hour or two and just shoot out photos of me. My press photo kit was shot in an underground parking garage with my photographer, and we did it in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I have my jacket on. I have my jacket off. I have my hat on. I have my hat off. We're in the parking garage. We're in the hallway. We're sitting by the stairs. We're like, it only cost me $300 to have all of these beautiful photos taken. And now that I have lots of them, it's not, first of all, it's not shot on my phone, and it just gives you so much credibility.
Yeah.
So find a friend, find a wedding photographer, find anyone, but get a lot of photos and make sure that they're real, of your team, of your company, of your product, of your service, of your customers, of your clients. The next thing is social proof. You have to have testimonials, one-liners, case studies. It doesn't matter how much you spend or how little you spend, but everyone needs way more social proof than you think. And when I was building Phanta early on, we found an opportunity to partner with a nonprofit called the Marketing Hall of Legends. Mm-hmm. And the Marketing Hall of Legends each year would induct 4 to 10 of our nation's greatest marketers. And so this was a really expensive project for me to take on as a partnership for free. But what it allowed me to do was spend every year a lot of time with 4 to 10 of the nation's greatest marketers.
Yeah.
And then what I could do in my meetings is I could say, well, I was talking with this guy the other day, or we could just put the work up on our website. And so it's almost like we were buying in to the opportunity to get credibility. Mm-hmm. And you can do this with affiliates. You can do this with partners. You can do this with press people. You can do this with anyone. So just the next thing I would say is, and it's totally underleveraged, find ways to put yourself in a position where you're around the people you want to be around, or your work is being displayed. It's being shown. It's allowing it to sell how awesome you are. Because as Brian Scudamore, the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, told me years ago, and I love the story, they killed themselves to get on Oprah, and they got on Oprah.
Yeah.
But then forever they can say, "Oh, did you see us on Oprah?"
Right.
No one saw them on Oprah. They were on Oprah once in like 1999. But years and years later, they could constantly say like, "Well, you probably saw us on Oprah. You probably know us from Oprah." And they can just use it over.
Instant credibility. Right.
It's huge credibility.
Yeah.
So those are my tips. Focus on photography. Make sure that you look the part. Make sure everything is real. And then the next thing is find a way to like get yourself in or give away or buy yourself some credibility, because you can use that forever.
Sure. Excellent. Phanta Media, where do we find you?
Yeah, you can go to Phanta.com. Again, I'll spell it out for you. Phanta.com. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is @MarkDrager. Or if you want to check out the podcast, head over to YouTube. It's called We Do Hard Things.
Excellent. Well, Mark, thank you very much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bela, well, that was an interesting interview. It was really a fascinating conversation. What were your big takeaways?
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed my conversation with him. And, oftentimes we do not think about brand when we start a business. And we don't think about how our customers, our potential customers, view the company. So what image do they have of our company? When they hear the name of our company or they see one of our products, what's the first thing that, pops into your brain? And, we all have our favorite brands. I'm sure you do. I have mine. And I think about those companies, not just about the products that they make, but sort of they stand for something, right? Hence the labels on things. That's why people put labels on things, because it stands for something. And, you love them for a particular reason, and it's what they stand for in your own mind is what makes you want to buy their products. So I think that we, as small companies, large companies, medium-sized companies, you need to give this some thought, and it should be just as you think about product design or designing your service, you should think about the identity of your company. You need to work on your brand in the same way. So, Mike, let me ask you a question. So what does brand mean to you?
Good question, Bela. And, I guess looking at it from kind of the entrepreneurial standpoint, I think there's internal and external connotations. When I say internal, I mean, brand is really important at the outset for the founders and the early employees in terms of how they feel about the company. And, you talked about identity and how this identity evolves in the early days. And I think brand can have some real power there. But then there's this other side of it, the external kind of meaning of brand. And that's really to customers or suppliers and eventually shareholders, right? Or other investors. And, that's a different set of perceptions, because it's really a promise, right? Of here's the value that we're delivering or that we're promising to deliver, and this is why you should choose us. It's an interesting challenge, I think, to align the internal connotations and the external connotations. And I like this word you use, this kind of strategic identity of the company, right? That the brand fits both internally and externally. Now, I think external is way more important. Maybe internal is important in the early days when you're building your team and you're trying to attract some vendors. But at the end of the day, the brand's got to be recognizable. And as he was talking about, it's short and easy to remember and easy to type into a URL and things like this. That the brand really needs to be external and something that helps differentiate you from the competition. And I think that brand is really important for that. And I think there's lots of ways eventually to make sure internally that your strategic identity is aligned. And I think you can do that in lots of other ways. So I guess my kind of idea is that don't worry so much about the internal connotations of the brand. Really focus on what it's going to mean to customers, because you usually only have one chance to connect with a potential customer, right? And if the brand turns them off or the brand doesn't attract their attention, at least it kind of helps. Or it really creates, a damage. It really increases your customer acquisition costs and hurts your traction. I think internally, there's lots of ways to connect with your employees and lots of ways to build this internal strategic identity. And that's just good communication. So I think that's my answer right there is, don't worry so much about the internal connotations. Really focus on what the brand means to the the customers and to a lesser extent to investors. And I think Mark totally addressed that. I really like how he talked about naming the brand and making it something that was easy to pronounce and easy to type in a URL. And so when you answer the phone, it rolls off the tongue. I think those are actually really important things that as founders don't always think about. And so I thought that was really cool. And then I also liked about the conversation, how he shared his personal stories and his struggles and how Mark's life experiences and his family background really influenced his entrepreneurial journey. I mean, this is the brand of self, the own brand, right? The brand of him and how he created his own brand and his own identity from really a tough background. How often do you see this where someone's personal or family background really influenced their career?
Well, I think, there's what you are is the confluence of your life experiences, and your life experiences include your family and your history, all your culture and all those things together. And I think you can't, when you're starting a business, you can't help but to have that be part of your business and to be part of your sort of culture. And I think it's important, and we should embrace that. I think, in the past, I will tell you that I always made this, and I think part of this was culture, because my father never brought work home. I mean, he brought it home in a briefcase and he would go do some stuff, but it never was a topic of the dinner table, or it was very rarely a topic at the dinner table. So there was this, for me growing up, there was this clear delineation between work and sort of our personal life. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do know that as my career was developing, particularly when I worked in smaller entrepreneurial companies and did startups, the identity of the founders and their culture and their life experiences was all intertwined in the company. It was just part of it, right? You were living, it was hard to separate your friends, your family, your work life, and your personal life from the company, because startups are so all consuming, and it just all becomes one thing, right? And we would have big outings on weekends, and the whole company was there, the whole company being 10 people and their spouses and their kids. But we really promoted this notion of family, of a corporate family. And that was a new notion to me growing up, because I never sort of had that feeling when I was a kid, because there weren't corporate events and stuff like that, or corporate family events, I should say. So I think there's a lot of value in that. And because I think it does set the brand of your company and the internal brand, how your employees feel about it. And, there's really this sort of, we talk about corporate culture often, but I think corporate culture and brand and sort of what your company stands for are all intertwined, and they're all various different ways of describing fundamentally the same thing, and that's really important. That this identity, this culture, this brand, what your company stands for, is very important. And I think it needs to be the same or almost similar, very similar, both internally and externally. I don't think you can have a different external brand than you can have or a different, front of the house facing culture and a back of the house facing culture. That's danger. So I think you got to think about this and say, this is what we're going to be. This is who we are, and we're proud of it. And we may tweak it. It may evolve over time. It will evolve over time, but I think you want to accept it and you want to embrace it, and you want to make it part of your corporate identity. I mean, I don't know if that I answered your question or not, but I rambled on there. But it's sort of something that I've gotten to appreciate as my work experience increased over time, right? Because again, at home, I didn't observe any of those types of things. My dad worked for a big company, IBM, for most of his life. I started work at GE, and there was no really hanging out with the people you work with. There was no department picnic or any of that kind of stuff. and then I worked for IBM, and yeah, we had sort of a department softball team, but it really wasn't right. And we had Family Day, as it was called, but which was a full day event at an amusement park where all the employees from that division went to this amusement park for a day. But it really wasn't a bonding experience, so to speak. Particularly in the smaller companies is where I worked, where I got to appreciate that more, at the value of that, and how it does kind of bond people to the company. It gives people an emotional connection to what you're doing. It's not just a transactional, but you move it from transactional space, and you add to that transactional space, you're adding in this emotional component, which I think can be good.
Yeah, I agree, Bela. And if you talk to some of this is generational too. It's changed over time. I think a lot of my younger former students, I mean, you don't have to look very far when you look on LinkedIn to see, or Instagram, right? To see a lot of these, the younger generation they're posting about these events, and lots of big and small companies do these bonding events and these social events. And I mean, you can overdo it, but I think this sense of family and this sense of caring is really important to a lot of people, especially I think younger generation, but not all. I know older people my age, and a little younger than you, that like these things. And I know a lot of companies spend a lot of money on these events, and I don't know if that's the best use of shareholder money or not. That's open, of course, for discussion. But I think that again, it's knowing what you need internally, and it's neat. I'm working on a research paper with my wife and a couple other people right now on this, and how much kind of social bonding do you need? This identity do you need from your job that's part of your person? We're looking at it in the context of co-working spaces, right? And how much do co-working spaces fill that need for people who don't have an office, right, or a regular office,
or working from home.
Right, exactly. And that's where co-working spaces can kind of be a middle ground, where you can go and have this social network. Maybe they're not maybe a few of them are your coworkers, but they're other working professionals, and you can help each other and support each other, and have a coffee together and things like that, getting you out of the house, let's say, right, or wherever you typically work out if you don't work in a traditional office. And I think that these social events serve a similar purpose. And again, it is part of the brand of the organization, right? That we care about you, and that you're we're a family, and not only startups, but bigger companies do this too as well. But then there's thousands of people at these events, right? Which is kind of interesting. So how much of a family is it? I don't know.
Right.
But I really think this idea of the social support as part of that brand, that some employees really want, other employees don't. That's a great thing when you're looking for a job to ask about, and to know what you need yourself, what you want yourself, and what the organization not only offers but expects you to take part in, right? Because there's an expectation in some organizations, if you're going to have these events, that you better show up or you're not, quote unquote, a team player. So it can work both ways. So I think a nice way to maybe close this out is really understanding what you want, or try it and see, right? Do I want to be part of an organization that really blurs the lines between work and life? Or do I want a clear separation? In Germany, this, that we have very clear separation between work and life, and the boundaries are more like what your dad was like, right? This is very European, traditional, and now younger people want a little bit, I think, of an erosion of these boundaries a little bit,
right?
But I'm not an expert. I just observe things. But if you just go on LinkedIn and scroll, you'll see, right? There's lots of examples of this. But I think at the end of the day, this idea of brand being something that's important internally and something important externally. And it should be consistent, like you said. It should clearly state the strategic identity of the company, the values you believe in, and the way you want to do business. It might only be one word, right, or a logo, but you want to try to capture some of this when you create that brand. And it's hard to change a brand. I think once it gets set in the mind of consumers, you do want to tweak it. But you want to try to get it right the first time, because you don't always have a second choice to make that first impression. But great conversation. I think probably we should wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think let's wrap this one up, Mike.
Cool. Well, listeners, thanks for joining us again today. We hope you found the episode interesting and thought-provoking like we did. If you have questions about what we've discussed, as always, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
And please do hit that follow button on your favorite podcasting app so you'll get notification of when our new episodes get released. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you soon, Mike.
Sounds great, Bela. Thanks for everything. And from over here in Münster, Germany, we'll see you next time.